Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're tackling a really fascinating topic, the intersection of religion and social change. We've got some compelling excerpts from sociological texts that you've all shared, and I think what's really interesting is how different perspectives view religion's role. I mean, is it about upholding the existing structures, or can it actually be a catalyst for change?
Yeah, that's a question that sociologists have been grappling with for
For
centuries.
centuries.
Yeah. And one of the, I guess, most common starting points is to look at how even schools of thought that are pretty different, like functionalism, Marxism, and feminism, all kind of view religion as a force for stability in different ways.
It seems counterintuitive at first glance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because, religion is often associated with tradition and resisting change. It's almost like a built-in brake system for society.
Mhm.
But why would those perspectives all agree on that?
Well, they each have their reasons. Like, functionalists, for example, emphasize how religion kind of creates a shared set of values and beliefs. It's like a moral compass, right? That guides behavior, provides a sense of comfort, and that kind of social cohesion it promotes. It reduces the likelihood of really disruptive change.
So it's less about stopping change altogether and more about making sure it happens gradually within the existing framework.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. You see it, for instance, in how many religions have strong stances on things like family values, often opposing practices that challenge traditional structures like divorce or abortion. It's about preserving the status quo more than resisting any change whatsoever.
Makes sense. Those family values act as a kind of societal anchor, I guess.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
But Marxists have a much different take on religion, don't they? It's more about control from their perspective.
Yeah, that's definitely a key part of the Marxist perspective. They argue that religion can be used to kind of distract the working class from inequalities that are inherent in capitalist systems. The promise of a better afterlife maybe discourages people from questioning or challenging the status quo.
So while functionalists see it as a source of stability, Marxists see it as a way to maintain existing power structures, even if those structures are unjust.
Precisely. And I think it's worth noting that both perspectives kind of acknowledge religion's power to shape social behavior, even if they disagree on the ultimate purpose of that influence.
It seems like both perspectives make valid points.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then we add in the feminist perspective. There are some similarities there to the Marxist view, but with a particular focus on gender dynamics.
Absolutely. Feminists often view religion as a force that reinforces, patriarchal power and traditional gender roles. They point to practices like the traditional Church of England marriage vows, for instance, where the bride vows to obey her husband, but the groom doesn't have a reciprocal vow. Or the emphasis on male leadership that we see in the family structure in many religions.
It's almost like religion becomes a way to justify and perpetuate existing gender inequalities.
And those feminist critiques have led many to question whether religion can ever be truly liberating for women or if it inherently reinforces their subordination.
This is pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
We've gone from social glue to a tool of oppression, potentially.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how does Max Weber's theory about Calvinism and capitalism fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Because it seems to suggest that religion can actually drive radical economic change.
Weber's theory is really fascinating because it kind of challenges this assumption that religion is always a conservative force. He argues that in the case of Calvinism specifically, there was a specific set of beliefs that unintentionally laid the groundwork for the rise of modern capitalism.
Okay, so unpack that a little
Right.
bit. I know a little about Calvinism, but I'm eager to hear how their beliefs could possibly lead to something as complex as capitalism.
Well, you have to start with those core Calvinist beliefs like predestination, divine transcendence, asceticism, and this concept of calling. They're all interconnected, and they have these really profound implications for how Calvinists live their lives.
I've always found that concept of predestination particularly hard to grasp. I mean, how could anyone live with that idea that your fate was already decided before you were even born?
It was a central tenet of Calvinism, this belief that God had already chosen who would be saved, the elect, and who wouldn't. And nothing you did in your life could change that preordained destiny.
It seems like that would create an incredible amount of anxiety. I mean, how would you ever know if you were one of the chosen ones?
Well, that's where the idea of divine transcendence comes in. Calvinists believed that God was so far beyond human comprehension that we could never truly know his will or understand his reasons.
Okay, so you're predestined, but you have no way of knowing if you're destined for heaven or hell. That sounds like a recipe for some serious existential dread.
It definitely created a psychological dilemma, for sure. Imagine the pressure of trying to live this righteous life while simultaneously believing that your efforts might be ultimately futile.
Makes you wonder how they coped with that uncertainty.
Well, that's where the other key tenets kind of come into play. Asceticism, with its emphasis on self-discipline and abstaining from worldly pleasures, became a way for Calvinists to demonstrate their piety and seek signs of God's favor. They believed that hard work and material success could be interpreted as evidence of their elect status.
So it wasn't about enjoying wealth or indulging in luxury, but rather about proving your worthiness through worldly achievement.
Exactly. The pursuit of wealth wasn't for personal gain, but rather a form of religious devotion. Idleness was considered a sin, and hard work became a virtue.
It makes me think of that Benjamin Franklin quote, "Lose no time, be always employed in something useful." It just seems to perfectly capture that Calvinist spirit of industriousness.
It does. And that relentless work ethic, combined with their tendency to reinvest profits rather than spend them on luxuries, it created this economic engine that unintentionally fueled the growth of capitalism.
It's like their desire to prove their salvation through worldly success inadvertently created the conditions for a whole new economic system to emerge. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It's a remarkable example of how religious ideas can have these unintended consequences, sometimes shaping the course of history in these really profound ways.
It does make you wonder if there might be other examples, maybe even in the present day, where religious beliefs are shaping social and economic trends in ways we might not even realize.
Now, that's a fascinating question, and one that we will explore further in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far.
We have covered a lot of ground already, from the conservative functions of religion to the unexpected link between Calvinism and capitalism. It's clear that religion is a complex force with the potential to both stabilize and transform societies.
Indeed. And as we continue our exploration, we'll delve even deeper into this multifaceted relationship between religious beliefs and social change, uncovering more intriguing connections and thought-provoking insights along the way.
So we were just starting to talk about how Weber's theory and the link between Calvinism and capitalism might have some parallels in the present day. I'm really curious to dig into some modern examples.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think it's worth revisiting some of the criticisms of Weber's theory that we touched on earlier.
You mean like the argument that even in places with significant Calvinist populations, capitalism didn't always take
Mm.
off in the same way?
Exactly. And this is where the nuance of the argument really comes into play. The presence of Calvinism alone wasn't a guaranteed recipe for capitalist development. There were other factors, both in terms of these specific interpretations of Calvinist beliefs and the material conditions of the society.
So it wasn't a simple Calvinism equals capitalism. There were other ingredients needed for that economic transformation to occur.
Precisely. Some historians have argued that the lack of robust capitalist development in certain Calvinist communities was due to a lack of access to resources, limited trade networks, or even unfavorable legal and political structures.
It's like having a talented chef and a great recipe, but no kitchen to work in. The potential might be there, but the environment just isn't conducive to success.
That's a great analogy, and it really underscores the point that societal change is rarely a simple linear process. Multiple forces are always at play, and religion is just one piece of that puzzle.
But even with those caveats, Weber's theory still provides a powerful framework for thinking about how religious ideas can have unintended consequences on economic systems.
I agree. It really challenges us to consider those complex ways in which beliefs can influence behavior, even in seemingly unrelated spheres like economics.
It's like a ripple effect. A shift in religious thinking can create these ripples that spread far and wide, influencing everything from individual work ethics to the structure of entire economic systems.
And that brings us back to the present day. Are there any modern examples that might sort of echo that Calvinism-capitalism connection?
Well, when we left off, I was thinking about the rise of the prosperity gospel movement, particularly in the United States. It seems to share some pretty striking similarities with that Calvinist idea of worldly success as a sign of divine favor.
Oh, that's a fantastic example. The prosperity gospel really emphasizes that belief that faith and positive thinking can lead to material wealth and success. It places a really strong emphasis on entrepreneurship and financial prosperity as evidence of God's blessing.
And it's not just about individual wealth, it's a whole mindset that sees economic success as a reflection of spiritual righteousness.
Yeah, you're right. And that emphasis on hard work, self-reliance, and the pursuit of material wealth, it resonates really strongly with that Calvinist work ethic that Weber described.
What's interesting, too, is that the prosperity gospel has spread beyond traditional Protestant denominations.
Hmm.
You see it in Pentecostal churches, charismatic movements, and even some non-Christian faiths.
That's a really important point. It suggests that the appeal of this blend of religion and material success might be tacking into something deeper, something that kind of transcends specific religious boundaries.
Maybe it reflects a very human desire to find meaning and purpose in both the spiritual and material realms. I mean, in a world that often feels uncertain and chaotic, the idea that faith can lead to tangible rewards might be particularly comforting for people.
It's certainly a compelling idea. But of course, like any belief system, the prosperity gospel has its critics. Some argue that it oversimplifies the relationship between faith and wealth and, has the potential to exploit vulnerable individuals.
It raises some important ethical questions for sure about the role of religion in a society where economic inequality is a growing concern. But regardless of your perspective on the prosperity gospel, it's undeniable that it's a powerful force shaping the beliefs and behaviors of millions of people worldwide.
And it provides a really fascinating case study for exploring the ongoing influence of religious ideas on contemporary social and economic trends.
It makes me wonder if there are other examples, maybe less obvious ones, where religion is playing a role in shaping our understanding of work, wealth, and success.
That's a great question to ponder. We've been so focused on Weber's argument about Calvinism and capitalism that we might be overlooking other really intriguing connections between religious beliefs and economic systems.
For example, what about the role of religion in the development of communal living or alternative economic models?
That's an excellent point. Throughout history, various religious communities have experimented with different ways of organizing economic life, from monastic communities that emphasize communal living to faith-based initiatives that promote social justice and economic equality.
It seems like we've only just scratched the surface of this vast and complex topic.
I agree. There's so much more to explore in terms of how religion intersects with economic systems, social structures, and even individual beliefs about wealth and success.
It's a good reminder that the relationship between religion and social change is multifaceted and constantly evolving.
And that understanding this relationship is crucial for grasping the complexities of the human experience, both in the past and the present.
It's been a fascinating discussion so far, and I'm eager to continue exploring these ideas. But before we delve any further, let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and prepare for the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. We'll return shortly to wrap up our exploration of this intricate and ever-relevant topic.
Wow, we've been on quite the journey, haven't we? Tracing these threads that connect religion and social change.
Yeah, it really has. It's fascinating to see how religion can be both a source of, stability and a driver of transformation at the same time.
We started with those classic sociological perspectives: functionalism, Marxism, feminism, each of them highlighting how religion can reinforce those existing social structures.
Right. And then we delved into Max Weber's theory, exploring that kind of unexpected link between Calvinism and the rise of capitalism.
And we even took it into the present day, looking at how movements like the prosperity gospel, reflect that ongoing interplay between religious beliefs and economic systems.
It's clear that religion isn't static. It adapts and evolves in response to the world around it.
Like a chameleon, shifting its colors to blend in, but also influencing those surroundings in the process.
Exactly. And as it adapts, it can have these really profound impacts on the shape of societies. I mean, we've seen how religious beliefs can influence everything from family structures and work ethics to entire economic systems.
It makes you realize that to understand history and culture, you can't ignore the role of religion. It's like trying to understand a painting without looking at the colors.
Absolutely. But as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We've focused a lot on how religion influences society, but what about the reverse? How does society shape religion?
Oh, that's interesting. Instead of religion being the actor, it becomes the acted upon.
Precisely. As societies change, their religious beliefs or practices often change right along with them. Think about how different religions have adapted to things like globalization, technological advancements, and shifts in cultural values.
It's a two-way street then, a constant dance between religion and society, each influencing and being influenced by the other.
Exactly. And that dynamic interplay is what makes studying religion so fascinating. It's a window into the human experience, reflecting our deepest hopes, fears, and values.
And it reminds us that even in a world where, secularism is on the rise, religion continues to shape our individual lives and our collective destinies.
On that note, I think it's time for us to resurface from this deep dive, but I encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Pay attention to those religious currents in your own life and in the world around you.
You might be surprised at the insights you discover. Who knows, you might even uncover some fascinating connections between beliefs and societal shifts that we didn't even touch on today.
The possibilities are endless, so keep those mental gears turning. And until next time, happy exploring.